Hey, this is Megan from EngageBay, and in this video we are talking all about email sequences. We will go over what they are, we'll give you a brief example, we'll talk about a few of the benefits, and then we will end with best practices. Now, an email sequence is probably exactly what it sounds like. It's a sequence of emails. Put differently, it's a series of messages that you send people who opt into your list. Let's do a quick example. Let's say you have a freebie on your website and people can receive that freebie when they sign up with their email. So they provide their email address and their name, and they automatically get an email that contains that freebie. Then maybe 2 days later, they get another email that provides relevant information related to that freebie as kind of an additional resource to whatever that topic is. And then maybe another 2 days later, you send them a third email, and in that email, there is a link to a podcast episode that you think they might be interested in. That's your email sequence. There are all sorts of benefits to using email sequences for your brand, but there are two in particular we want to cover. The first is that these are very, very warm leads, okay? These are people who are opting into your email list of their own volition because they're interested in what you have to say and offer. This is your target audience right here. So spending time nurturing these relationships, getting to know them, allowing them to get to know you, this is going to be very valuable in the long run. And that's why your email list is something that you can monetize so heavily. It's because it's full of your target market. And as an added bonus, all of this can be automated. It's not like you're going to be manually sending all these emails out. Once you put in that initial effort of setting up the sequence in the first place, it just runs on autopilot in the background. So not only are you building these amazing relationships, but you're doing it without really having to lift a finger. Pretty cool, huh? All right, let's move on to some best practices. Tip number 1, you need to find the right frequency for your audience. Where we see a lot of brands go wrong is that they hesitate to email the people on their list because they're worried about bothering them. But you have to remember that these people signed up to your list on their own, voluntarily, because they want to hear from you. So you don't want months to go by in between your emails. You might consider emailing them once a week or a couple times a month. And honestly, there are some brands who send emails every day. As long as you are providing value, you can really get away with emailing them quite frequently. Test what works best for your audience, but don't be scared to reach out to them. You have to stay in touch. Now, a second ago, I mentioned always providing value, and that brings us to tip number 2, which is always give before you take. We said earlier that your email list is something you can monetize, but what you don't want to do is send your first email, and that first email is asking people to purchase something. It's too soon. You have to date before you get married. So what you always want to do is provide value, give them information, give them resources, educate them, entertain them. You want to spend more of your emails growing this relationship and getting to know each other before you ask them to do anything for you. Tip number 3, you want to customize this content. Let's say people sign up for a freebie that will teach them how to do basic SEO, search engine optimization. All of the emails they receive after that should somehow have to do with SEO. You don't want to start emailing them about social media because you have no idea if they're even interested in that. Tip number 4, you need to monitor your metrics. The only way to know what's working and what isn't is to know your numbers. So as an example, let's say your open rate is really low. The problem is most likely your subject line, because that's the first thing people see, and that's the first thing that they use to decide whether or not they want to learn more. Let's say you have a high open rate, but a low conversion rate or a low click-through rate. That means that people are intrigued enough to open the email, but ultimately what you're offering and the CTA you're using aren't strong enough to get people to take that next step. The only way to figure this out is to know your numbers, and based on what your numbers are telling you, you can adjust your approach. Lastly, split test. You want to split test everything. You can, as an example, split test your subject line. You'll have subject line A and subject line B. One thing to keep in mind with split testing, which is also called A/B testing, is that you only want to change one variable at a time. So if you are testing 2 different subject lines, then everything else in that email should stay the same. Okay, you have to isolate these variables so that if you get different results, you can be sure that it was that one variable that triggered that change. Make sense? All right, cool. If you're ready to start creating email sequences, sign up for EngageBay today.